Welcome back, Grief Nation listeners, and thank you for tuning in today. Today, our topic is Everytown Network Survivor Fellow Story Share with Adriana Pentz. Hello, Adriana. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm really excited to share your story. Can you please tell us your journey being a gun violence survivor?
Sure. My journey really began in May of 2017, right around Mother's Day. And I'm going to provide a little bit of context when I start this story, because I think the context is always really important.
Yes.
In May of 2017, my sister, I'm the oldest of 4 children in my family, and my sister gave birth to her son, her first child. And it was a really exciting time for my family, my siblings, and I, because other than me, she's the second person in the family to have kids.
Okay.
So during her delivery process, we were literally in the waiting room for 9 hours waiting for her
Wow.
baby to arrive. And I was with my 2 brothers. I was with my 2 children. I'm very close to my family. And so she had a healthy baby boy. We got to spend Mother's Day together with the new arrival in her family. And then the days leading up to, one of the biggest tragedies in my life, I was with my family a lot. The 1 week after the birth of my nephew, we went to my sister's house, and she was having kind of a barbecue to celebrate the fact that she was home with her baby.
Yeah.
And I was, again, with my family. My brother, who died by gun suicide, my younger brother, Luke, he was with us that day. And, Luke was somebody who was struggling. I think he was, struggling a little bit with depression. I think he was struggling a little bit with substance use. And, we had gotten into some family arguments that day, which was very typical for
Yeah,
us.
absolutely.
What happens with families. And he sort of got angry and he walked off. And we were really concerned about him. And we hadn't heard from him later that day. This wasn't the first time that happened with him. And we kind of let some time pass to allow the emotions to cool down. But we hadn't heard from him that night. And the next day, everyone in the family was kind of checking in with him. A couple of days passed and we still hadn't heard from him. Someone in my family had gone to check on him at his house, and had noticed he wasn't there, but he had noticed that there was extra food that was left out for his animals, which for us was kind of a signal that something was wrong.
Okay.
So, after a time period had passed, we notified the police. We filed a missing person report. And then we did a further sort of investigation into the house. It was a horrific process for us because it felt a bit like a scavenger hunt trying to put pieces together. And at one point, it was revealed that he had basically given an ex-girlfriend a code. The code was to a safe. The safe was opened, and it was an empty gun holder. And I think that was the point that we knew that he was not safe, and that he was somewhere with a gun. So the next couple of hours, day or two, I think this whole experience was about 3 or 4 days, were just really horrific for us. We weren't sure where he was. We had police looking for him. We had dogs looking for him. We had helicopters looking for him. There was a news report. It was just, it was a lot. And we did discover his body on May 23rd, where he had taken his life with a gun. So, yeah, we had feared the worst, and the worst had come true.
I am so sorry to hear your loss with your brother and your family. I can only imagine what those days were like for you. It's hard. Everybody's experience is so different. And I just, send love and light to your family. But on a lighter note, can you just share who was Luc-John? Who was he as a person?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Luc was a very special person. He was 6 years younger than me, but we had, of the four of us, two boys and two girls, Luke and I had the most in common, I'd like to say. We were both have very competitive personalities growing up.
Oh,
We were both swimmers. We swam together. He was a very smart and driven kid, all the way up to adulthood. He always excelled in school. He actually ended up doing so well in college that they invited him to do a fifth-year MBA. In
wow.
1 year, he did. I remember even at the funeral, his boss had come up to the family and said, he was like a son to me. He had this beautiful, warm, loving personality. He was driven, he was accomplished, and he was also a really big part of my children's lives. My children are now 6 and 8, and he just adored them. He
Yeah.
adored them, and he held them ever since they were babies, and he was a very consistent part of their life.
Wow. Such an amazing guy. It just sometimes I just sit and I think when I think about my own story with my son, losing him in the same manner, it's just like, wow, they lived a full life, no matter, what age or, that they left. But sounds like that he still had so much, life to live. Um, um, and I just commend you for sharing your story once again. Can you explain the complexities along your journey and how you move through the stages in your grieving process?
Whew, yeah, that's a hard one. You know, Before this experience, I hadn't, had a lot of death in my life. I
Okay.
was very fortunate. So this was shocking, surprising, and difficult. In the beginning, there was a lot that had to be figured out, a lot of unanswered questions that are still unanswered questions today. But in the beginning, it felt like, we literally had, and by we, the rest of my family and I, had a lot of pieces we had to put together. There was a criminal case. We had to make sure that, there wasn't anything suspicious
Right.
involved. And so it was just sort of being on autopilot.
Hmm.
The beginning was just like, you just do what you have to do,
Hmm.
without ever really like thinking or feeling about it.
Yeah.
Which, not to project anything about your experience, but I think, we go through these moments in time where, like, when we have to delay our feelings,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
makes it even harder when they hit
Right.
us.
Yeah. That's so true.
Um, yeah.
Wow. And something that you had hit on, that there was this trial and, we've never done that before. So, what does that look like? How, trying to unpack your emotions even around that, not knowing if it could have been something differently than what we, was already initially told, when the police or whoever gives you the information that, yes, we did find them, but then kind of, well, now there's an investigation and it's like, okay, now that's another thought that I didn't think about. So trying to wrap your brain around if it was something differently than what we originally thought. That's how our family kind of processed it, because even though when my son was found, we were like, okay, did something happen to him, or did he, not until it was acknowledged that that's what happened. It was a self-inflicted wound. So, not until then, there was all of these thoughts and emotions and
Mhm.
who could it be, or what happened, so I totally get it. I get it. Please give us some thoughts as a sibling survivor and your grief reaction to suicide.
Whew. Um, it's so hard because when you grow up with somebody, when you share so much of yourself with somebody, and Luke and I were close because we had a lot of the same struggles. We both kind of struggled with depression. Both struggled at points in our life where we, felt overwhelmed, where we felt like, life was too much, where we
Mhm.
were struggling. I think that's one of the things that really brought us together. I say this very publicly. I've struggled with substance use, in my past too, with alcohol, and I'm sober now. And so, when I watched my brother, you know, with his own struggles leading up to his death, like it was almost, it kind of drove a wedge in our relationship,
Mm-hmm.
because you recognize what's going on, but you also don't know how to help.
Yeah.
For me, I've asked myself a lot, quite frankly, like, how is it that I'm here and he's not?
Mm-hmm.
How is it that we've struggled with the exact same things and I'm alive and he's dead? And those
Mm-hmm.
are some of the hardest questions to think about, just in general, because there are no answers,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's never any answers.
Yeah. I had to quote you here because it was just so simply amazing. You said, I remember walking through the farmer's market one day shortly after my brother died. I felt like a zombie, drowning in my pain and sorrow. I saw a table of women with red shirts on, talking about gun violence prevention. I told them about my brother. It was the first time I shared information about my loss with a total stranger. They hugged me and I cried. It was the first I started to feel better. I believe that one of the most fundamental desires we all have as humans is to feel connected and understood. Beautiful. So beautiful. Talk to us about your advocacy work in your chapter there.
Yeah, it was such a blessing to stumble across that Moms Demand Action table. Um, I can't speak enough to how amazing that organization is. I mean, Moms Demand Action is the nation's largest gun safety group. I got involved with them shortly after I lost my brother. And for me, it was the most beneficial thing I could do with my grief and with all the difficult emotions I was dealing with, because it gave me this channel to turn all of that negative emotion into action. And I think
Yeah.
we all know that we live in this crazy society where a lot of action is needed around gun safety. But
Yeah.
I think, to the quote that you just read, I think what's like the real magic of this organization is just that ability to connect to people. And similar to the experience at the farmers market, I remember going to my first Moms Demand Action event, and it was a survivor event. And I was like, I walked in and there were a room full of 50 people, and I felt so uncomfortable. And I felt like shame with this
Hmm.
around this
Oh
story,
yeah, I get it. Yeah. Hmm.
and even now I wrestle with that. And somebody sort of, Moms Demand Action had a survivor wall, and I brought this picture of my brother and a story, and I put it up on the wall, and it was very emotional for me. I like broke down in tears. Again, it was like this process of telling the story for the first time publicly that was so hard for me.
Hmm.
And they just, like, somebody came up to me and hugged me and held me, and they brought me to a seat and they put me in the front, and they said, sit with the survivors. And there was,
Oh.
I felt like I didn't belong there,
Oh. Oh yes.
sitting next to people who had lost their children, sitting
Hmm.
next to people who had lost,
Hmm.
you know, people in like mass shootings. And,
Hmm.
I didn't understand my place.
Yes.
But it's become very much like a community and a family to me. And it's the relationships that really drive me forward and make me feel like, the work that I'm doing is important.
Oh my God, you have just touched my soul because I felt the same exact way with my son. I
Mm.
know exactly what you mean when you say you don't feel like you should have been even in the room. Not until I received the education around what gun violence is and what all the different types of losses through gun violence, which suicide is one of the highest.
Yeah.
But because I didn't know until I joined Moms and start learning more of the research based information that was provided to me, then I start feeling better because I know exactly what you're saying. Um, I was in this room, even though I am a mother and I lost my son, but I lost my son to suicide. So I was like, I don't think that I fit in here. These women have lost their son to city gun violence or, the mass shooting. So I just didn't think that I fit in. I was like, is this the wrong, platform for me to be at? Should attend more of, the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention meetings? I just didn't know until like you said, moms provide all of this great information, and then all of the events that they put on, did I learn that yes, I do belong. I do belong. So I understand. So I'm so grateful that you touched on that. Your work speaks for itself. So please share the community work you've done in Westchester, New York, regarding the programs for individuals impacted by mental health and substance abuse.
Yeah. So I think I referenced that, I struggled with substance abuse. For me, my life took a unexpected turn when I became a mother. I gave birth to my daughter, and I had, what was undiagnosed postpartum depression. And for me, what I did was I self-medicated with alcohol, because I felt trapped in those feelings of just overwhelmed with parenthood.
Yeah,
Um, and I just, I wasn't in love with being a mother, and I felt like my experience was very different from the world outside. But because of that, I've done a lot of work with the postpartum community. I've done a lot of work with
wow.
individuals who struggle with substance abuse, and then losing my brother again, like, just who also struggled with substance abuse, who also struggled with depression. I mean, these things are so intertwined with each other. It's unbelievable. You can't address one without the other, and
Yeah,
you have to look at the whole picture. And so, for me, it was just like, in so many ways, I just feel like this is the natural place for me to be, is to work with other individuals who are impacted by these challenges the same
yeah,
way I was.
yeah, yeah. Now, can you share with our Grief Nation listeners what is the Everytown Survivor Network Fellow Program and your experience now going through it?
Yeah. I just became a fellow a couple months ago.
Congratulations!
And it's such an honor. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Another great network. So the Everytown Survivor Network is like one of the largest communities of survivors impacted by gun violence. And it's an opportunity for us to come together to really hone in on our stories, to build a more collective community message, and to amplify our voices by doing advocacy work and sharing our stories. And it's an incredible community because we get education and training and support, to really try and move the needle and make a difference in this work, and building a safer place for our families and our communities.
Wow. How did you enjoy? Where was your training at?
So interesting that you asked me that, because what they did this year is what year did you join the
It
network?
was this year. Ours was in Miami this past February.
Oh, I'm so jealous. So COVID-19 hit before our training.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. Okay, but you had virtual training, I'm
We
sure.
had virtual training. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was different. So, but I'm
Yeah.
sure the experience was still just amazing, meeting your co-fellows. So, I'm sure, well, we kind of like, I'm sure with, ours being probably, it maybe was the last class before, maybe I think that your region was supposed to, oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
beautiful experience either way, however you had to take on that experience, but I'm so glad that you're my fellow.
I know, you too. This is the beginning of our journey together.
Absolutely. So in this era that you mentioned, like the COVID-19 and the transition, what coping strategies that you can provide to individuals that have had similar losses?
Yeah, that it is so important right now to think about coping strategies.
Yeah,
It's such an incredibly hard time for reasons that are obvious, right? Like this threat of getting sick and getting infected, but then also just this, like, everything that this environment does to our mental health. And
right.
so I think in terms of coping strategies, like for me, it's first and foremost like creating the space and recognizing how I'm feeling,
Yeah.
and that's really hard. It's April, I'm coming up on the 3-year anniversary of losing my brother. And it's just, I don't know if you feel this way, but it's like the closer you get to the date, like it
Hmm,
just
hmm.
consumes you,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Easter, Easter is a time that I'm like celebrating with my family, and it's usually a very happy experience. And I just was so weighed down on Easter Sunday from just the sadness of the hole that I feel of the loss of my brother.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think, again, the acknowledging of that first and foremost is important, and creating the space to feel and to grieve and to be emotional and to release this energy that we have around the loss we've experienced. And then find the resources, and
Yeah.
the resources look different now than they did before.
Yeah.
It's going to be online,
Yeah.
but sometimes it's like reaching out to, like, one thing I've really done is reached out to, I've thought about, like, who are the people, the friends in my life who have meant so much to me,
Right.
who I haven't had the time to connect with, or I've been too busy to, meet up with. And, I've been trying to go back to those relationships
Yeah.
and cultivate them in this period that, we have fewer barriers between us.
Mhm, mhm. Because initially it's kinda difficult, with friendships, isn't it? When it first happens, because it's like, what was your experience with, say, with your friends? Because I know sometimes you self-isolated, I'm sure, for a time being, and I know people was trying to reach out to you and trying to check on you, so share that.
Yeah, in the beginning, it was like, I feel like we were all like, let's keep ourselves safe, right? And so for
Mhm.
me, it was like, I don't have time to talk to anyone. I'm
Mm.
keeping myself safe. I'm keeping my
Yeah.
family safe.
Yeah.
But then it was like, wow, this is really, really lonely,
Yeah.
and I think loneliness happens even
Yeah.
if you're living in a house physically with other people.
Yeah.
So,
That's true. That is really true. So what's
yeah.
next for your journey?
That's a great question. I mean, I think I feel very grateful to have stumbled upon Moms Demand Action and the Everytown Fellows Network, and just leveraging those resources, like
Mhm.
meeting people like you and other people in the network, and figuring out, like, how do we tell our stories better to a bigger audience, and how do we help to, I think one thing that's been hard for me is, like, we're so desensitized to gun violence these days just
Yeah.
because it's everywhere, and I think that we get tired as a society, we get tired of talking about it. And I feel a personal responsibility, having been so affected by this, to
Mhm.
keep pushing this conversation forward, and to not let people just feel apathetic and helpless. I think a lot of people feel helpless about
Yeah.
what to do,
Yeah.
and it's not true. There's so much that each and every one of us can do.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. How can the community support you and helps with your mission of what you're doing?
Hmm. What a great question. I think taking those baby steps, just like taking action. I think one thing that has been infuriating to me, now that I am a mom and I have kids, my kids are in kindergarten and second grade, and they're going through active shooter drills in their school.
Mhm.
They don't even understand what gun violence is, and yet they have to go through a drill as if
Wow.
somebody's coming through their school with a gun. And I think, again, thanks to these amazing networks that we're a part of, we're starting to see that the research is showing that this is actually having a negative impact on children. Children are not safer, teachers are not more prepared,
Mhm.
and it has a mental health, emotional impact, consequence,
Yeah.
when children have to go through this. And so we, as a community, every single parent, every single friend, anyone that knows a kid, has an ability to take action and say, we have to change the way that this is done. And that goes for anything under the broad umbrella of gun safety. There's so much that we can do if we just take one action, if we just see that we can be agents of change.
Thank you. And how can someone join where you are located, or just moms in, anywhere?
Yeah, Moms Demand Action has a lot of great opportunities to join. You can literally sign up by text, by going to the website, or putting your email in on the mailing list. And as one of the most well-organized grassroots organization around, Moms Demand Action will make sure somebody follows up with you. One of the things I do in our local community in Westchester is we have events often,
Mhm.
so that we can share information. And let people know how to get involved. So you can, even as simple as contact me or contact your local chapter, and we'll sort of reel you in.
Exactly. Okay. So how can others reach you? What's your social media platforms?
Oh, I have to get so much better at this. I use Instagram right now.
Okay, that's fine.
My Instagram handle is Am Pentz. And I'm on Facebook, and my email address is adriana.pentz@gmail.com.
Okay. And tell us your favorite quote. I always like to end with something uplifting. What do you have for us?
Yeah, it's a little long, so bear
That's
with me. But
um, we have all the time in the world.
I find this quote. I've been reading it a lot during this particular time of COVID,
Mhm.
and here's how it goes. This is your assignment. Feel all the things. Feel the hard things, the inexplicable things, the things that make you disavow humanity's capacity for redemption. Feel all the maddening paradoxes. Feel overwhelmed, crazy, feel uncertain, feel angry, feel afraid, feel powerless, feel frozen. And then focus. Pick up your pen, pick up your paintbrush, pick up your damn chin. Put your two calloused hands on the turntables, in the clay, on the strings. Get behind the camera. Look for the pinprick of light. Look for the truth. Yes, it's a thing. It still exists. Focus on that light. Enlarge it. Reveal the fierce urgency of now. Reveal how shattered we are, how capable of being repaired. But don't lament the break. Nothing new would be built if things were never broken. A wise man once said, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Get after that light.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Adriana. So before I let you go, what has your attention being a leader in your community that you would like to see change or just bring even further awareness to?
Could you ask me that again? I'm sorry. What?
Sure, no problem. What has your attention in the community that you would like to see change or bring further awareness to?
Yeah. Do I have to give you one thing?
Yeah, what just something that you just have seen, like, I've had enough of this. I want to see some change there. And it could be something as easy as recent, what we've seen on the news with this COVID, or, just, something that you just would like to bring some further awareness to that we haven't hit on.
I think it just comes back to, like, we are all human beings and we go through the same experiences. And even when you're talking about gun violence, 58% of Americans are personally affected by gun violence. That is, again, a mind-blowing statistic. We may be um, separated by distance. We may
Mhm,
be isolated in our homes, but despite everything that we're going through individually,
mhm.
there's so much more that we have in common. And so I just, I want us as a world, as a community, as families to be, better to each other, more empathetic, more connected and understanding, because at the end of the day, we're kind of all the same.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Adriana, for coming on to the show. I truly appreciate your time and you sharing your story about your amazing brother and your journey. So thank you so much.
Thank you. This was such a wonderful experience, and I am so grateful to have had this opportunity, and for you and what you're doing to amplify voices.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks. You too.